Escorts and gigolos, have any of you ever had a close friend or anyone you normally interact with daily be a surprise customer? What was the experience like, and how did it affect your interactions with them? Story 1. Kinda, sorta, along the same lines, I guess. Once a friend wanted me to go to a strip club with him located outside a small town in Alabama. A young, really young looking girl got on the stage and he told me, "Look at her, isn't she the prettiest thing you've ever seen?" I said, "Yeah, but she seems like she's too young to be working here." "Don't worry, she's 18. "How do you know?" I asked. "She's my niece." I felt uncomfortable after that. I had a similar situation at a small town strip club. Shockingly, there were like 10 girls working that night. For context, there were probably only 4 guys at the club besides my group, bachelor party. One girl was particularly good looking. I went up to the bar, and another dude about my age started talking to me about whatever. And in the conversation, I mentioned how good looking that one girl was. Turns out it was his girlfriend. I was shocked. At the end of the conversation, he offered to let me bang her if he could drive my car, a 550 horsepower, heavily modified BMW. Definitely did not take him up on that offer. Holy crap, the stories in this comment section are wilds. I've been on this thread for like 3 hours. Should mention, hooked up with a girl in college and found out the same night she was a stripper. We always stayed cool. Saw her once at the club when I was trashed, went to her stage, and she did her thing at stage 1. Then put all her crumbled money from the stage in front of me as she progressed to stage 2. Being a homie, I stacked it nicely. Then, being her friend there for a good time, I made it rain with her own money, and got all the other people around me to start making it rain too. It was more fun than anything else. Story 2. Last semester, I ran a massage service, and I had this one client I particularly liked because he was so friendly, positive, and just smart as heck. I never asked my clients for their last names, or too much about what they did for work, and the only thing I really knew about this guy was that he was in a STEM field. Well, fast forward to one existential crisis and a college major change later, and this semester I have to take chemistry. Lo and behold, that really smart client is now my professor. Neither of us is currently acknowledging it, but I can tell that we still feel that bit of connection we did when he would come see me for massages. Edit. It was a massage, regardless of whether I'm a licensed professional. Giving someone a handy J after working out their pain, tensions, knots, etc. for an hour doesn't mean you didn't massage them. I sympathize for those who are victims of assaults and harassment. I face the same sort of things with my business, and that's never okay. But massage therapy is, and probably always will be, associated with this type of work, and people who engage in either endeavor should be aware of the risks involved. The people who conduct assault against other people are responsible, not me or anyone else who does this type of work. I'm not going to call my service just a happy ending service, or whatever else people want me to say, because a massage service is the most accurate phrasing for the operation I was running. I did not at any time claim to be a licensed professional, and I was always honest with clients about it. Yes, I'm aware that it's illegal. Also, for the sake of massage therapists, please do not assume that they offer happy endings. Wait, if you ran a service, were your other employees also students? Also, do massage services ever go beyond hand stuff, or nah? I can't speak to whether this OP had employees, but for those wondering about the commenter's other question, it seems clear from her edit that she didn't go beyond that. I'm sure some do, but there are also escorts who don't go any further than that, so you definitely shouldn't make any assumptions about your massage therapist. Ultimately, if you're going to pay for something like this, remember that the person you're seeing is still a person and has the right to set boundaries. If a restaurant can refuse to serve people they don't like, the same definitely goes for this kind of work. The fact that you're willing to pay doesn't actually obligate them to do any more than they feel like doing. Besides, they apparently might wind up in your chemistry class someday, so it's best not to make things too weird. Story 3. Cousin 1, female, is a stripper. Cousin 2, male, lives in another state and hasn't seen me or Cousin 1 since we were kids. Cousin 2 comes to visit. Cousin 1 invites Cousin 2 to her place of work one night. He knows it's a strip club, but expects Cousin 1 to just be bartending or waitressing or something. Anyway, Cousin 2 rocks up to the club, and Cousin 1 has her boobaloobaloobies out. Cousin 2 said he turned around and walked right out of there. What the F, Cousin 1? Why? Guy here. I was close with my cousin. She got blindingly drunk one Christmas party at her house. I was dancing with and about to seal the deal with her best friend. I hear someone yell about someone stripping and turn around to see my cousin fully naked. We locked eyes. She looked like she immediately sobered up and took off stumbling to her room crying. We talked about it later and came to the conclusion someone at that party, not me, kept mixing her drinks strong. She would always carry a nice buzz at her parties, but being the hostess, she would keep it level-headed. That night, I saw, quite literally, a side of my cousin I never want to see again. I don't think she had ever been that drunk, or has ever since. So your cousin's friend was kind of a beast? I respect honesty. Can you please tell the court which state you live in, so that we can stereotype? Thank you. Story 4. Not a worker, though. Funny story, one night my best mate was in town, lived in another state, used to live here. We went out clubbing and eventually decided to go to the strippers. Pay our money, and as we enter, my friend notices a stripper laying on her back, spread eagle for a guy. Highly drunk, he yells out, "Hell yeah, how good is this?" The stripper hears and notices my friend, sits up and yells, "What are you doing in here?" My friend instantly went and sat in the corner, properly embarrassed. Turns out it was his cousin. Family gatherings are going to be super awkward now. My dad told me a story recently. During work, he and the rest of the construction crew went into a local strip club that had been a cheap lunch buffet. Notice that one of the girls is my cousin, my mom's niece. Pays for his meal, gets a to-go box, sits out in the truck, and eats his lunch. Cousin comes out and says hi after a while. Imagine a construction worker sitting in his truck, slowly eating lunch. He's got 1,000-yard stare forward, away from the venue. Suddenly, he hears the tapping of heels on concrete, a knock on his window. We are barely into this thread, and it already seems like the major theme is people finding out their cousin was a stripper. As you can probably imagine, the comments are just chock full of jokes about Alabama. Since most of these guys didn't actually do anything with their cousin, the joke doesn't really land. It's also just kind of old at this point. But in all seriousness, I expected a lot of these stories to get weirder than they did. It sounds like the guys in this story did the right thing by not really engaging, but the strong reaction by the dad is kind of odd when you think about it. He almost seems ashamed or embarrassed to find out that his niece worked there. So was he looking down on the other women who worked there? At the end of the day, it's just a job. He probably would have been fine to stay there as long as he just didn't watch his niece. Either way, it's pretty cool that this strip club offers to-go boxes for their buffet. Story 5. There was a girl I went to high school with who was basically a walking stereotype. She fit so well into the archetypal ditzy blonde molds that you might swear it was an act if you didn't know better. She was also freaking mean. This girl was a power witch and wasn't really nice to anybody as far as I'm able to remember. People orbited her because she was hot and had everything. She never really bothered me because I did my best to be invisible, but the handful of interactions I ever had with her left me feeling unpleasant. Turns out she wound up being a pretty lucrative stripper later in life. I bought a lap dance from her, and while being nice is part of the job, it really did feel like, in those brief few minutes, that she did have a genuine personality shift. She was way more laid back. You could even hear it in her voice. She even commented about how she wasn't, quote, a witch like I used to be, and I have nicer boobaloo-baloobies. It was a genuinely fun interaction. She seemed happier in comparison to the person I remembered. Maybe she had bad parents and was being controlling with her peers as a coping mechanism. It's funny that you mentioned that because the only thing I know about them was watching a brief exchange at a parent-teacher night. I don't know about her dad, but her mom was basically a human Barbie doll and fit the textbook definition of airhead. It actually seemed as though she was a bit embarrassed, but they were almost identical in both looks and behavior. This was all based on one period of observation, though. Story 6. We surprised a friend from university that was working at a strip club to pay for her studies. She just noticed us, winked at us, and did her show as usual. 0 fricks of any kind were given by anyone. I had a friend at uni that was a stripper. I only found out because she got really drunk one night and told me. I always wondered how she managed to never get found out, but apparently it's 'cause students are always broke and can't afford it. If they ever do, it tends to be on a holiday abroad or a stag party, not in their uni town. I was a bouncer at a strip club in the college town I went to school in. I did run into some of my classmates from campus at work. Sometimes they'd come in for amateur night and get offered a job. Other times they worked for an agency and would end up there for a night for whatever reason. It was kind of an unspoken rule to not say anything. If we bumped into each other on campus, I'd say hi to them. I ended up in a group project with one of them. It wasn't weird, it was like working on something in school with a coworker. I would say the only weird thing was ending up at a keg party where one of my coworkers was there, and when the cops came to bust it up, I felt compelled to warn her and get her out of there before anything bad happened. I've never been able to resolve why I felt I needed to have done that. This is really sweet. Your simple gesture of companionship without expectation was probably a welcome change of pace. I have no doubt that you gave her something to look forward to. That last comment response is kind of weird. Like I said before, it's just a job. We really shouldn't be talking about a guy being nice to his coworker as if he's done something special or unique. Of course, we all know there are guys who would have just naturally expected something from her. There are guys who expect something from their female colleagues at McDonald's, for heaven's sake. Some guys just expect something from every woman they meet. But if you're at a party with a friend or coworker, warning them that the cops have shown up is pretty normal. Treating guys like heroes for doing the right thing just helps perpetuate the idea that guys will do the wrong thing whenever given the opportunity. Story 7. I had a friend who's a lifestyle dom. For those unfamiliar with BDSM lingo, a female dominant, not professionally, just personally for fun. She's into a lot of freaky stuff, but working in the public, she's very secretive about her identity. No pictures of herself online, and very, very cautious before meeting anyone. Well, she's had guys message her asking her for some pretty nasty stuff, like bottling her pee and selling it to them, or even making a crap sandwich on one occasion. Yes, an actual crap sandwich. Well, the messed up part is she messages with these guys, and they, without her asking, reveal all sorts of personal details about themselves, like where they live or work, and they would send her photos of themselves. On more than one occasion, she has run into one of them at work, and they had no idea it was her. She recognized them and thought to herself, "This is the guy that begged me to make him lick his own protein off my feet, and he has no idea who the heck I am." It would just make her feel even more powerful. Although she remained perfectly professional in their interactions, but may have acted a little meaner than she normally would because she knew they liked it. Edit. For the record, she never did/sold any of these things. They were just requested by people she was chatting with. She's not comfortable with these things, like the sandwich, but it doesn't stop people from making these requests. Yeah, I hope that crap was at least organic. Just gonna jump in here and say that what people like in normal everyday interaction and what they like in the bedroom are most certainly not the same thing. This had better not awaken anything in me. Please like and subscribe if you've made it this far. I hope you'll enjoy the rest of this video and have a wonderful day. Story 8. So most people in this line of work screen our clients. That means we have their personal info to run a background check and make sure we are not about to get arrested or murdered. It also eliminates the chance of a creepy friend trying to secretly book us. Like how exactly? I've never used the service, but of all places in the world, I'd consider a brothel to be the last place to give your personal data to. Most of us don't work in brothels, and it's 100% normal and common safety practices to give that info to an independent escort you want to see. If an escort isn't screening, it's because they're strapped for cash to the point of being okay putting their personal safety at risk, or they're a cop and it's a sting. What do you think we're going to do with your name and address that would gain us more than a paying client and a good reputation? This is stuff that varies wildly by region. These threads always get mixed up because people on the internet forget that. For a lot of Europe, Australia, etc., this type of work is legal as long as it's in a brothel. So most of the workers there do work in brothels and aren't worried about cops and stings. No such thing as background checks when I worked, but reception checks IDs to make sure minors aren't getting in, and their security. There are actually several things I can imagine someone doing with my personal information that I wouldn't want them doing. First of all, I don't know how asking for my information to do a background check makes it less likely that someone is a cop. That actually feels very much like something a cop would do. So I'd discourage anyone from believing this OP on the point that not requesting a background check somehow makes someone more likely to be part of a sting. If this is illegal where you live and choose to look for it anyway, then the chance of being arrested is a risk you're going to have to get comfortable with. Second, scammers are everywhere these days. Giving out your personal information to anyone, especially someone who you already know is willing to break the law to make money, is always a risk. Again, it's your choice if you want to take that risk or not, but don't let anyone convince you these risks are non-existent. If you really believe that, then you've pretty much earned whatever's coming to you. Story 9. Not exactly someone I knew well, but I went on a Tinder date with a guy, went to see a movie, nothing exciting. Nice enough guy, but no chemistry at all, so didn't stay in contact. Opened my hotel door to my client one night to see him standing there, but didn't react to the fact that I knew him because there's not a single person who knows what I do. Spent the entire booking telling me how sad he was that we never caught up again, and how he knew it was me when he saw my photos. Photos were blurred and face cropped out, but I've got distinguishing hair. And how it must be fate. Played dumb the whole time because this guy knew my actual identity and eventually asked him to leave because of how uncomfortable his behavior was making me. All he had to do was shut his mouth. Story 10. I'm a stripper. My friend's dad came in. I hadn't seen him or my friend since high school. I accidentally asked him for a lap dance before I could tell who it was. He said no, and I realized who it was as I walked away. He came in a few more times and avoided eye contact with me. When I was on stage, he would look away. Another story. On my first day as a stripper, I saw two guys from high school. We chatted, then they both paid for lap dances. I mean, respectful of your friend's dad, but why would he keep coming into that strip club after that? Maybe he doesn't have that many options. Just like a strip joint had to close down in Prince Edward Island because of the small community, the strippers and patrons were usually related somehow, and people would stop going. Story 11. My much younger brother was getting married and had a bachelor party at a strip club with a dozen or so high school friends. After about an hour there, a rather ordinary-looking stripper comes on stage, takes off her top, and there are tables of guys going wild, standing and applauding and hollering. I have no idea what's going on. The stripper looks through the stage lights, her eyes get really big, she grabs her top and runs off stage to the back. Bouncers come running over to our table, thinking we're starting trouble. Nope, it turns out all the guys in his high school class had a history class with her a few years back. She later came out and talked with us, said she never thought she'd see someone, let alone 12 people that she knew. It was in the next town over. Thought it was his soon-to-be wife. Friend, got any nude pictures of your fiancé? Groom-to-be? No. Friend, would you like to buy some? That would have been something. Reddit's a weird place. They frown on cheaters like it's the worst sin you could possibly commit, but in a story like this, they're basically hoping for it to turn out that the fiancé is stripping behind the guy's back. I know we're basically just into these stories for the drama, but there's a certain level of drama that you should only really come to respect if you're primarily reading subreddits full of fake stories, like Am I the A-hole? Other than that, your best bet for the level of drama demanded here is probably Riverdale. Story 12. When I was a cam girl, I would have many guys message me saying they were my cousin or something. They were not, just trying to play out a fetish, and I wasn't into it. So then one day a guy in the main chat said that he knew me and his name was AJ, fake name. I was like, yeah, right, I've only ever known one AJ. If it's true, what's my name? And sure enough, he put my real first name right there in the chat. We were in a youth group in church together almost a decade before that. He became a regular. That happened with me and my estranged older half-brother once when I was camming. I messaged him on Facebook to confirm, and we had a good laugh about it. Much smarter to private message than challenge them to put your private info in the main chat. But still, I think if any of my brothers had found me, I'd never be able to look them in the eye again. Glad y'all could laugh about it. Story 13. Not an escort, but delivered a pizza to a known escort, and at the same moment I was about to knock on the door, a relative opens the door and watches me holding the pizza up to him. I couldn't do anything but laugh. He laughed too, maybe out of embarrassment, and as soon as the worker understood what was going on, she also started laughing. Never mentioned this moment to anyone who knows my relative, and he's grateful for that to this day. How grateful? Sounds like about $100 a month grateful. Hey cuz, wanna order another pizza, if you know what I mean? This took longer than expected, but I knew blackmail would come up at some point. To anyone who thinks like the commenter who suggested that, allow me to give you a little warning. If the relative is unmarried, nobody's really going to care all that much about where you saw them. Even if they are married, they'll probably tell the truth before they pay you a dime. By trying to threaten them, you'll only prove that you're malicious and a bit of a loose cannon. So at that point, they'll expect the truth will come out at some point anyway. But if they aren't married and they simply tell the truth to avoid paying you, then you'd better hope they don't also mention your blackmail attempt. You'll wind up being the one who gets ostracized for that. I know there are people who just think having dirt on someone gives them some sort of power, but if you need that to feel powerful, then you aren't. Story 14. In the mid-90s, my friends took me to a strip club for my bachelor party. A few cocktails and a few stage shows in, and out walks an ex-girlfriend of mine. She was stunningly beautiful, but bat crap crazy. My friends desperately tried to get her to give me a lap dance, offering her 5 times the normal rate, but she refused. She said it would be too much of an emotional strain for her, considering how intense our relationship was and how it ended. She ended up sitting with us between her floor shows and lap dances, just chatting. She had actually gotten married, and this was a way for her and her husband to save for a house. About halfway through the evening, one of the other dancers grabbed me and pulled me up on stage and whispered into my ear, "Are you wearing underwear?" Which I affirmed. She pulled my pants down, sat me on a chair mid-stage, and another girl loosely tied my hands behind my back. Each girl took turns giving me a lap dance up on the stage. Turns out my ex paid them all for a lap dance and arranged the entire thing. She knew she could trust you to keep her safe, and a pretty good way to say goodbye. Sounds like a fairy tale, in a great and sweet way. Strangely happy ending. Story 15. My mom was a stripper when I was in elementary school. A 22-year-old guy came in and paid for a lap dance, and my mom recognized his last name and asked if he knew Ruth. I have no earthly idea why she would ask him, given what she suspected. He got weirded out and said that Ruth was his mom, and my mom said that his mom was her daughter's 3rd-grade teacher. He then begged her not to tell his mom where he was. Apparently, my mom just laughed and said she didn't want her daughter's teacher knowing that she was there either. I hated that teacher. She was such a jerk to me because we were poor, and my mom always dressed in a revealing way. I'm glad her kids weren't as uptight as she was. You must have had one hell of a childhood for your mom to be that open with you about stories like this. I'm confused and intrigued. I didn't know about it until 6th grade. As far as I knew, she worked as a waitress in a nightclub, and she told me that her clothes, I did all the laundry, were to add shape to her body underneath her uniform, which she kept at work. As much as the teacher sounds kind of stuck up, it feels like some of this falls on the mother as well. Do what you have to pay the bills, but why do you have to dress like a stripper when you're picking your 3rd grader up from school? The teacher isn't going to be the only one who has a problem with that. So are a lot of the parents. You're basically making it harder for your child to keep friends, and for no good reason. No one at the grade school is shoving a dollar bill down your bra. You can easily save it for the stage. I've seen a lot recently about how women should be allowed to wear whatever they want, and I understand that when we're talking about things like safety, but there's a time and place. Flaunting what you have in front of a bunch of 3rd graders isn't an empowerment thing. It's just tacky. Story 16. I was a stripper back in the day. Halfway through a stage show, I realized that my flatmate's brother and his friends were there. That's how I was outed. Nothing much changed. Suddenly, my flatmate had a lot more visitors. That flat suddenly had more comings and goings. A lot more showers were taken, too. Story 17. I had a classmate who was a stripper, and she was very open about loving it when people she knew came to see her at work and let her dance for them. She thought it was intimate in a fun, friendly way. I was talking to a stripper. She said she had grown up in a suburb about an hour away and used to strip there. She said that ultimately there were too many guys from her high school who came in. I thought the point of being a stripper was that nobody came in. Bad word choice on my part. Story 18. Somewhat related, me and my buddy, Tom, go to this sleazy strip club in a different part of town. As soon as we walk in, he sees a bartender he went to high school with, who says, "Tom, you perv, what are you doing here?" Should have come back with the same question. My ex was a stripper and begged me to come see her years after we split. Does that count? Sure, I'd count it. Story 19. I was in the process of booking with a worker, and she sent me a few face pics that she didn't post in her ad. That's when I realized she was actually my cousin. I politely told her that I couldn't meet and never said anything to anyone, including her. Not an escort, but I was on a lifestyle site that was pretty much local to my state. My cousins who were there wanted to exchange photos. Their initials, age, and location concluded that it was them. I just blocked them from contacting me. Wait, this last story confuses me slightly. Is this OP really saying they knew the other users were their cousins because of their age and initials? I get that this was a local site, but is it really so impossible for 2 people to have the same age and initials in the same city or state? It feels like it would have been impossible to know for sure without exchanging pictures. should have gone for it. If nothing else, maybe you'll find out some new and interesting facts about your cousins. Please leave your stories in the comments. I'd love to make a video of them in the future. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe.